All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to How to Gain Admission to the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton, and the M&T Program, which is the Management and Technology Program between Wharton and Penn Engineering. I'm Dan Lee, and I'm here with Vitaly Borishan, and we are the co-founders and senior admissions consultants at Solomon Admissions Consulting. So at Solomon Admissions Consulting, all of our consultants are former Ivy League and top university admissions officers. These include the former associate and assistant directors of admission at places like Cornell University, UPenn, Stanford, UChicago, Dartmouth, MIT, etc. This table shows our average acceptance rates of our clients from last year. So the first column, you will see the average acceptance rate at the university in question in 2005, which is over a decade ago. Then you will see the average acceptance rate of our clients at that university in the last column, and the column in the middle will show the average acceptance rate at that university last year. So you can see, for instance, Columbia University, over a decade ago, the acceptance rate at Columbia University in 2005 was 12% nationally. When our students applied last year, the acceptance rate at Columbia University in 2016 was 5.8%, and 24.3% of our students that we work with who applied to Columbia were accepted at Columbia University. You can see a similar thing for Stanford. The average acceptance rate in 2005 at Stanford was 13%. The average acceptance rate at Stanford last year in 2016 was 4.6% nationally, and 29.5% of our students got into Stanford. In the University of Pennsylvania in 2005, the average acceptance rate was 29%. In 2016, last year, the acceptance rate at UPenn was 9.1%. So the acceptance rate was decreased by over 2/3. And then 32.1% of our clients were accepted last year at the University of Pennsylvania. So why care? Selectivity at Penn varies based on the undergraduate school and program in question. And this in particular applies to a lot of the dual degree programs that are between either Wharton and Arts and Sciences, Wharton and Penn Engineering, or Wharton and a different school. And so it's important that you apply to the best fit school or program at UPenn. How does Penn evaluate applicants? So when Penn evaluates applicants, they look at both an applicant's academic and personal profile components. So the academic profile can roughly be broken down as 50%, and 25% of the overall profile is your SAT-1 or ACT scores, as well as your SAT-2 subject test scores. 25% can be your grades, your class rank, as well as your course rigor, course difficulty, which refers to the number of AP courses you took. 25% of your overall profile is your personal statement, supplemental essays, and addendum, and the addendum can address anomalies such as low grades in the transcript. And these things can all be improved at the time of application. Your personal statement, obviously, your supplemental essays, as well as the addendum. And the last 25% is really your activity sheet, the interview, and the recommendation letters. And those can be improved as well at the time that you apply. So let's look at some of the differences between Penn and the other Ivies. Unlike the other Ivies, UPenn only gives applicants an academic rating. That's not to say they don't look at the personal profile, but for the official rating they give is only for the academic rating. Penn also invites faculty to evaluate candidates. For instance, if you apply to the College of Engineering at UPenn, they will have engineering faculty on the admissions committee. The selectivity at Penn varies greatly based on which of the 4 undergraduate schools one applies to. Penn, unlike most Ivy League schools, has an undergraduate business school, Wharton, and that's very unusual for an Ivy League institution at the undergraduate level. And Penn also looks more for a fit to a particular school or college. So at Penn, every applicant is given an academic index rating or AI rating on a 1 to 9 scale, and 1 is the lowest, 9 is the highest. This is really based on 2 components, your GPA and your standardized test scores. So as far as your GPA is concerned, when you apply to Penn, your GPA is recalculated based on a simple unweighted 4-point scale, which does include pluses and minuses like B+, B-, and all academic years. So they look at freshman grades, sophomore grades, and junior grades. as well as all your courses taken. And that's a bit unusual because a lot of schools will not only look at your academic courses. Penn has no preference between the SAT versus the ACT, so they'll take the highest score from either the SAT that you took or the ACT. Penn highly recommends submitting your two highest SAT2 subject test scores in subjects hopefully related to your intended area of study, so obviously related to the major that you checked in your application. And your GPA and your test scores are combined for a total score from 0 to 140, which is then tiered on a scale from 1 to 9. So a student with a perfect GPA and perfect test scores would have a AI or academic index rating of a 9, which is the highest before any other factors are taken into account. So Penn looks at both the academic and personal profile. So when they look at the academic profile, they're looking first and foremost at the academic index rating on a 1 to 9 scale. Like I said, 1 being the lowest, 9 being the highest. They also heavily consider the academic course rigor of the student's curriculum relative to what is offered at their high school. So if you've taken a lot of AP courses and you're a high school, if you've taken almost all the AP courses your high school offers, that's really what they're looking for. They're also looking for evidence of love for learning outside the classroom, as shown by recommendation letters and independent academic projects. These can be academic projects with a professor or a teacher outside the classroom. And the recommendation letters really need to show that you love learning. And that's really what separates the great students from the good ones. In terms of the personal profile, Penn doesn't give students a specific rating for the personal profile, but they're looking for angular students who are specialists at one thing over students who are well-rounded. So Penn, like pretty much all Ivy League schools, is looking to build a well-rounded incoming class composed of students who are specialists. So they're looking for students who are not well-rounded. So Penn specifically looks for applicants who take an interdisciplinary approach to academics. And this is very important to keep in mind throughout the application process, especially for the supplemental essays at Penn. They really want your supplemental essays to speak to a interest and love for interdisciplinary learning, combining different subjects and channeling your learning through the combination of different subjects to study a specific area or field. Penn students, and the reason for this is that UPenn students are allowed and encouraged to take courses in all 4 schools at Penn, and this creates an interdisciplinary academic experience. So if you're in the nursing school at Penn, you are encouraged to take classes in arts and sciences, engineering, Wharton, and same for students in all the other schools. They're really encouraged to take courses outside of their particular school or college, and that's why they really look for students who take an interdisciplinary approach to academics. So let's look at a sample student profile of a student who would have the strongest academic profile as an applicant to Penn. So this particular student would have all of these qualifications. This particular student would be in the top 1 to 2% of his or her high school class. This student would have taken the most challenging course load of AP courses. So if your high school offers 8 AP courses, you would have taken almost all 8 AP courses. This student would have SAT, ACT, and SAT2 scores in the 99th percentile. This student would have glowing letters of recommendation, indicating that the student is best out of the applicants from the past several years from his or her high school, and that the student has a true love of learning. So they're really looking for students who love learning, not just for straight A students who are getting straight A students because they want to go to, who are getting straight A's because they want to go to Penn. This student would also have an intense level of learning, as evidenced by academic research outside the classroom with a college professor, leading to publication in a journal. And this student would have the potential to be the leader in an academic field in the future. So let's take a look at a sample student who would have a solid academic profile, but not the strongest profile at Penn. So this particular student would be in the top 5% of his or her high school class. This student would have taken the most challenging course load of AP courses. This student would have SAT, ACT, and SAT2 subject test scores above the 95th percentile. This student would have a strong but unexceptional letters of recommendation. This student would often lack the intense love of learning of academic 9s, with some independent reading outside the classroom, but no published research with a college professor. And this student is often driven to achieve by competition more so than by a true love of learning. Let's take a look at examples of different types of students who would have the strongest personal profile. And keep in mind, Penn, like all Ivy League schools, is looking for students who are extremely angular and who are specialists, not for students who are well-rounded. So each of these would be an example of a student who has a very strong personal profile when applying to Penn. Examples would include a student who is a published author, a student who is an Intel STS finalist, which is the top 40 in the country, an Olympic medalist, soloist at Carnegie Hall, USMO or US Math Olympiad qualifier, a student who has awards at the national level, and a student who has patents pending, obviously without parental involvement. Here are examples of students with a solid personal profile, but not the strongest with Penn. This would be awards not at the national level, but more at the regional level. Significant commitment at a high level to a few activities, which could include student body president, all-state orchestra, captain of the varsity sports team, or a nationally ranked debater. And well-rounded and involved, but not the most passionate about anything. And this student is what we like to call the jack of all trades but the master of none. And these students often have a very difficult time getting into places like Penn. So how does selectivity vary by school and program at Penn? So UPenn has 4 different schools that you can apply to. You can apply to the College of Arts and Sciences, Penn Engineering, which is the College of Engineering at Penn, the School of Nursing, and the Wharton School for Business. So the most selective school at Penn by far is the Wharton School of Business. And within the Wharton School and within Penn in general, the most selective dual degree programs, and before I go into this, the dual degree programs at Penn are between 2 different schools at Penn. And the dual degree programs that I'm about to go into are actually more selective than getting into Harvard and Stanford. So probably the most selective program at Penn is at M&T, Jerome Fisher M&T or Management Technology program at Penn. And that's the Jerome Fisher Program in Management Technology, where students earn a BS in economics from the Wharton School and a BS in engineering or BAS from the School of Engineering and Applied Science. The Huntsman Program in International Studies and Business, where students earn a BA from the College of Arts and Sciences and a BS in economics from the Wharton School. And the Roy and Diana Vagelos Program in Life Sciences and Management, where the student earns a BA from the College of Arts and Sciences and a BS in economics from the Wharton School. These programs are all more selective than Harvard and Stanford. So let's talk about Penn engineering admissions. So there are certain things that you want to consider if you're applying to study engineering at Penn. First and foremost, the engineering faculty is on the admissions committee. And so because of that, there's a greater emphasis on grades and test scores, as well as a greater emphasis on academic research and engineering. And one thing to keep in mind is that Penn engineering, like the engineering programs at all Ivy League schools, are trying to achieve a 50-50 male-female ratio in the student body in the incoming class. And so everything else being equal, a female applicant is oftentimes twice as likely to get in as an equally qualified male applicant. Let's talk about transferring internally between the different schools at Penn. So this is once you've been admitted and let's say you want to transfer out of your school to a different school. So the difficulty of transferring really depends on where you want to transfer. So internal transfer to Wharton is almost impossible. You have to have an extremely high GPA after your freshman year, and it's very, very difficult to transfer internally to Wharton. Internal transfer to arts and sciences is not difficult at Penn, and internal transfer to Penn engineering is difficult, but very possible, much more so than transferring internally to Wharton. So what do Wharton and the M&T program look for? So Wharton and M&T, the evaluation criteria is really threefold. They're looking for students, first and foremost, who have a very strong quantitative background. And this can be, shown through your grades in upper level advanced math courses, as well as your quantitative and math test scores. Secondly, they're looking for students who take an interdisciplinary approach to academics. And this is particularly important for the M&T program because you're combining engineering with business. And they're also looking for students who have an entrepreneurial drive. So let's talk about the first criteria, strong quantitative background. These are the questions that Wharton and M&T are asking. Does the applicant have strong grades in advanced math and quantitative coursework? Does the applicant have strong standardized test scores in math and quantitative subjects? And has the applicant applied his or her quantitative background in independent research projects? Let's talk next about the interdisciplinary approach to academics criteria. So Wharton and M&T are asking, does the applicant integrate disparate academic disciplines to study a topic or subject? And they're also asking, has the applicant engaged in academic research that combines different academic fields? Like I said, they're really looking for students who want to combine different fields, whether it be to study business or engineering. And let's finally look at the third criteria, which is entrepreneurial drive for Wharton and M&T. And Penn is basically asking, has the applicant started a business in high school? Has the applicant started a nonprofit organization in high school? Has the applicant shown evidence of being entrepreneurial, even if it's not business related? And so the entrepreneurial drive component doesn't necessarily have to be business related. It can often relate to starting a nonprofit organization that relates to community service or volunteering. They just want to see that you're a self-starter and that you're able to have the drive to start things on your own. So let's look at the finer points for the M&T program. So M&T applicants are evaluated by both the Penn Engineering admissions people as well as by the Wharton admissions people. And both schools must accept the applicant. And so that's key because you're being evaluated by two different schools and both schools have to check off and approve your admission. Attending the Management and Technology Summer Institute is not mandatory. UPenn has a M&T Summer Institute, and it's not mandatory for admission, but is recommended. And you'll see that 11 of the 53 students in the M&T class of 2021 attended the M&T Summer Institute. Not mandatory, but it's highly recommended. We've had a lot of students get into M&T who did not, in fact, go to the Summer Institute, but it certainly doesn't hurt. There's a greater emphasis on near perfection in terms of grades and test scores. The M&T program is very, very meritocratic, and they're simply looking for the best applicants and the best people. And one thing you'll notice about the M&T program is there is a less of an emphasis on diversity. The M&T program is only 35% female. Let's talk about strategic positioning for Wharton and M&T. So what is strategic positioning? Strategic positioning is a fancy way for making you stand out. So you're positioning one strength against an institution's weaknesses. So if any of you watch tennis, the tennis analogy would be if you're a fan of Nadal and Federer, you know, when Nadal plays Federer, Nadal often goes from his lefty forehand to Federer's weaker one-handed backhand in an attempt to break down Federer's one-handed backhand. And so you're pitting Nadal's strength against Federer's weakness. In the college admissions context, it would be for the purpose of making you stand out. So an example in the college admissions world would be that it would be more advantageous for an engineering whiz with science awards to market his or her strong engineering background to Yale, where not as many engineering majors apply, versus marketing that same background to MIT, where he or she would blend into the crowd. So this is the most important strategic positioning note for Wharton and dual degree programs with Wharton. So a lot of the students we work with want to go to Wharton and want to eventually go on to investment banking. And that's a perfectly fine goal to have. You just can't talk about it in your application. So you definitely do not want to talk about wanting to be an investment banker in your Wharton or M&T application, because the admissions committee, the last thing the admissions committee wants to read about is a 17-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid who wants to go to business school and make a lot of money. So that's definitely what they don't want to hear about. So oftentimes what you want to do is you want to reframe your Wharton application to really emphasize social impact and entrepreneurship. If you look at Wharton's goal, it's to be, quote, the best business school for the world, unquote, not just the best business school in the world, but for the world. And you really want to reframe your Wharton application to emphasize more of a social impact or entrepreneurship, and you want to steer clear of investment banking. So let's take a look at a case study. So this is a client that we worked with in the past. This particular client was an Indian male from a private high school. He had all A's, taking the most rigorous AP curriculum. He had a 2340 out of 2400 on the SAT, back when the SAT was on the 2400 scale. He was a nationally ranked policy debater. He was an Eagle Scout. He had no business experience. He wanted to enter the Jerome Fisher M&T program to study business and engineering, and he eventually wanted to work in either private equity on Wall Street or at a large bulge bracket investment bank. And so obviously we can talk about that in the application because that's not as acceptable. So for the strategic positioning, we took this applicant, and the M&T program at Penn looks for, like I said, three things. They look for students with a strong quantitative background, students who take an interdisciplinary approach to academics, and students who have an entrepreneurial spirit, but one that's not necessarily business related. So the first thing we did is we set the student up with a research opportunity with an industrial engineering and operations research professor. And this strengthens his quantitative background and interdisciplinary approach, because industrial engineering and operations research basically combines engineering, statistics, and math to study different fields. It's very interdisciplinary. Instead of talking about the student's interest in private equity investment banking, we had him talk about in his application about wanting to combine his public policy experience through debate with his quantitative background to start a public policy think tank in Washington, D.C. that utilizes big data. So very entrepreneurial and socially impact and geared towards social impact and entrepreneurship, not towards investment banking. And the outcome was that this particular student was accepted at the M&T program, and he is currently applying for private equity and investment banking jobs. So at Solomon Admissions Consulting, we provide one-on-one college admissions consulting from former Ivy League and other top university admissions officers. This includes help from everything from A to Z, including the personal statement. We are working with a former admissions officer, they're helping you to select topics and outline suggestions, and the actual edits to the personal statements are done by our professional team of editors. Our editors are Ivy League graduates who are professional writers. So these are people who've written their own books and people who've written for the New York Times. They are the ones editing your essays for you. We also obviously do strategic positioning consulting, advising on how to stand out from the rest of the class. We obviously help you out on all your supplemental essays. The supplemental essays have to be geared towards what every school is looking for. So if you're applying to Penn, they're looking for students who take an interdisciplinary approach to academics. You have to emphasize that in your supplemental essays. If you're applying to Brown, they're looking for students who want academic freedom and who want an open curriculum. You have to emphasize why you're a good fit for the open curriculum and why you would thrive given academic freedom. We also provide inside information on college preferences, and those can come in very handy when you're writing your supplemental essays. Like I said, every school looks for something different. For instance, if you're applying to Stanford, they're really looking for students who have intellectual vitality. You have to emphasize that in your supplemental essays and in your entire application. We also work with students to shore up weaknesses. We also advise you on recommendation letters, not only who to get recommendation letters from, but what the letters should actually say and how they should be written. We also do extracurricular activities consulting. We help you plan out your entire school year as well as what to do over the summer. We help you with mock interview coaching, and we also advise on financial aid. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me. You can reach me by email at dan.lee@solomonadmissions.com. You can reach Vitaly at vitaly.borshan@solomonadmissions.com. And if you want to call us and talk to us, you can reach us by phone at 646-598-8174.